Good evening, folks. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And just bear with me for a minute. Technology. And so hopefully you see my picture up and you can hear my voice. So that being said, good evening. And I am Dr. Nakumbi, Coach K. We share this space. And tonight she would not be with us. She has actually some exciting family stuff going on. So awesome for her, but she won't be with us tonight. Like I said, I'll have my camera open for you in a second. But for those who are here, welcome. Thank you for your patience. And I'd like to start with a question for you to think about. And that question is, how do you manage your anger? So last week we were talking about anger, and we're going to talk about it again this week. And Coach K and I, actually, she had some very good ideas and techniques on how to cope and how to manage. And even though she won't be able to make it tonight, I actually wanted to run through some coping strategies with us using some of the same examples that we did last week, the different types of anger. So the different types of anger, we'll go through those and we'll talk about some strategies. And then when Coach K joins us again, then we'll go through some of those techniques that she wanted to present to you tonight. So if you have pen or paper, or however you take notes, if you use your phone, tablet, whatever, please get comfortable. Tonight will be a lot of education, so to speak. You'll get a chance to have some responses, and I'll have to check the chat. But in the meantime, let's start with that question. So if you have paper, pencil, tablet, whatever you need, and if you just use your own memory, awesome. But I want you to take a couple of minutes to write down that question. How do I manage anger? And whoever's here, again, I'll give shout outs in a bit. But starting with that question, how do I manage my anger? And while you're on that same piece of paper, if you go down, if you're doing this on paper, easier to kind of explain, but you go down till about the center of the paper and draw a circle. And inside that circle, you'll write you. And I'm going to show you this in a bit. I'll have it on the board. And that's actually where I'm en route to get to the board. So center of the paper, a circle. Inside that circle, write the word you, Y-O-U, or me, if you're talking about yourself. So me, and then some lines. We could start with 4. We're going to end up with a lot more, but let's do 4, like spokes on a tire. So around the circle, 4 lines, like spokes on a tire. They're gonna point to the 4 lines connected to the circle, and I'll tell you what those lines are in a minute. So if you have paper and pencil or using a tablet, if you're drawing it, if you're only writing the words, that's cool. The question would be, how do I manage my anger? Skip down a bunch of lines. Me or you, and maybe the colon, the 2 dots. So me or colon or a dash or equal. Me equal sign or colon, the 2 dots. If you're not drawing this out, if you're just taking note, me colon or equals. And then some space down, make line 1, some space down, line 2, space down some more, 3 and 4. So I'll have you work on that, and then I'll open the camera up and get that on the board so we can visually see it. Give you a couple minutes to work on it. So again, welcome and welcome tonight to the BlackMan Unfiltered Network. I am here with you. Coach K is off tonight. She has some great family news and events going on. So congrats to her. Hopefully you can hear me clearly. Let me see if I can see the chat at the same time. I couldn't even tell you to give me a one or a thumb. But just a second, I'll know in a minute here. Be able to respond to whoever's here. Tonight is not like class. You won't be, you're not in school again. But just do it. Yeah. All right, so you're not in class, but I do want to give you some strategies. They'll be coming from a few sources here. This one is mainly about women, helping women recover. There's a good section in here about emotional management. I'll be taking stuff from 101 trauma informed interventions. So this is actually this is the baby right here when it comes to interventions, intervening in anger. So I'll be pulling from that. And again, this is not class. I'll be doing the Dr. Nakumbi style. So I'll be giving examples. We'll be learning from it. I just want you to know where I'm drawing some of the material from. Seeking safety. If you recall, when we're talking, or in the past, if you recall me talking about safety. So a lot of times we don't use the word, if we don't use the word trauma, then we talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And if you didn't want to call it that, I mean, it is what it is, but that trauma word, a lot of people use it. So if you didn't want to use that word, but you had an experience, like what is that? That shook up your safety. And so I remember the example I gave was about a kid in a car, good parents, no shenanigans, good parents, no drug use and all that. We're driving, I'm in the back seat, and I look over as a kid, usually between the ages of 4 to 8. This is Adlerian teaching. So Adlerian, if you believe in Freud, Adler, and all those guys back then, I see a car accident across the road. And even though that's not us, my belief system is like, whoa, maybe it's even on fire. And we're doing fine in our traffic, but I start thinking, whoa, what if that was us? And I become hyper alert to like how whoever is driving, like what they're doing, texting, whatever, just because I don't want that to be us. Duh, right? Okay. But unannounced to me, that gets locked in the brain, and it could be 10 years later. And I'm still hyper alert about the way people drive 20 years later, 30 years later, because the schema in the brain, I always feel at risk. So anyway, I just want to remind us of that, about the trauma piece of it, and that it doesn't have to be like abused, neglected, physical, sexual, psychological, neglect, financial. It doesn't have to be all that, but it is an experience, so an actual experience. Another one we don't think about, grieving, having to say goodbye. Your parents got a good job, they moved, and the move, okay, I mean, at that age, I don't have any say-so. I'm voluntold. But the grief of having to say goodbye, wave goodbye to the back window, from friends, if I had any, school, pets. I mean, that's an entire grieving process that we don't think about. And the parents aren't doing anything bad. It's for us to have better. So we move, but that grieving process, I never really learned how to grieve. So it could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, one is not, we wouldn't call it abuse. Like we would say, no, that wasn't abuse. But we didn't realize psychologically it impacted us. It impacted. So I would like to share tonight some different views and angles on how some of these impacts have played a role in our emotional management, inability to express ourselves or ability to do so. All right. So, and then, so I showed you the men's version, women's version. This is the men's version. So there are a couple of different versions, and the significant, the authors who wrote these, for those who are questioning, like, well, does it matter if there's a men's version or a female version or a woman's version? But, you know, the authors of these, the Covington family and Dan Griffin and Rick Dyer, when they wrote these, what year? Anyway, when they wrote these, because of, there are some things that are considered significant for women and significant behaviors, challenges, different things that men go through. So copywritten 1999, and then the revision was 2008. So 1999, 2008, you know, there wasn't much talk about separating, at least not in this industry, wasn't a lot of talk of separating the, not separating, gender, not making it gender specific. It doesn't matter. A person feels this and a person feels that. But at the time these were written, they were very clear, and they're still out, very clear behaviors, attitudes, psychological things, physiological, body and mind things that men go through and that women go through. So there are two different versions of this healing and recovery book. So I am going to, and again, thank you for bearing with us. My apologies. It wasn't that I wasn't unorganized. We weren't sure what we were doing tonight to move forward. And so I left this room. So I'm back. And now I'm getting organized to be able to present this to you. I will be able to respond to your chat in a minute. I just need to see what you're saying here in a minute. So bear with me. If you didn't catch the first part, one of the ways I teach this or suggest that people, you know, if you want to, if it helps you, is to write it down. And if you use a piece of paper, I'm going to pop this so you'll be able to see. So if you take a piece of paper or your tablet or whatever you want to use, and I say you make a circle, see if you can see that. So do a circle, and in that circle, well, since you're doing it, then you put me. Okay, so me, and then 4 lines. We'll start with the 4 lines like that, because you're going to map stuff out there. But we'll most likely you'll put more lines. But we're going to start with you. All right. So, and if you're not using pen or paper, say you're kind of logging this and taking notes, maybe you're just like writing the words. So one suggestion is this: me, and then here like that. And then you go down some space and you put a line like that. So if you're interested in doing that, if you're not drawing it out, and then there's the drawing it out. All right. So again, this is not a class, but I want to be able to give you the information using some metaphors, analogies that we used in the last few weeks or one of the previous shows, so you at least have an idea of where this is coming from. All right. Mr. Bennett, what's up? How you doing? Can you hear me? Oh, there we go.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Good evening. How are you?
I am well, sir. I am well.
Excellent.
I got the last minute call, said you need a wingman. So I decided swinging the action for you. Good to be here. Good to be on with you guys. Obviously, I am not Coach K, as you can tell, but you know,
hey, but we're the ball
headed. Yes.
Yeah.
How cool is this?
Right.
Beautiful, beneficent, bold, brave brothers of the BlackMan Unfiltered Network are coming together once again to show that, again, the takeover is real. The revolution will not be televised.
Right. Awesome. By chance, did you catch any? Because I don't know where I don't see the stream. Did you catch anything that I've said so far? Oh, and I think you're frozen, or is it me? Oh, let me check. Are we frozen? Let me go here, here. CBN, are you? Oh, there we go. Was I frozen? You're frozen?
Well, both screens, like I saw the black.
Technically, both you guys were frozen for a short period of time, just for a matter of seconds.
Okay.
So I was hoping that the thing doesn't shut down the whole stream, because sometimes when streaming had a little glitch thing going along with it, so I'm not sure it affected you guys, which I don't know.
Right.
Suggesting it could be the case. That's why it's good to have fast internet service.
Absolutely.
So then let's get back to the show.
All right. Oh, CBN, could you hear me clearly before?
I could. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, you were coming in. Yeah, clearly. Just the video that was a little.
Yes, we can.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So, Brother Bennett, how in general, how's life going for you and your family?
Life is good. Life is good. Like I said, my wife and I were just trying to find new ways, to just working out this next period in our lives. My youngest one is 20, and so we see empty nesting sort of around the corner. And so we're just trying to figure out how we're going to be living that, and just things that we want to do, just getaways we want to get to and whatnot. And so, just helping the girls to come into adulthood. I think this is a very critical time for them. I got two graduates. I got one who's in their third year in college. And so helping them to adults, helping them to, understand what's really out there. So I feel these days my role as a parent is diminishing. So I feel more like a coach, like a or a counselor to an extent. And so I try to spit knowledge when I can, or just give them some perspective, things to think about. But at the same time, I got to let them make their, I got to let them make their own decisions as well. So it's a lot of transition in that respect. So it's an exciting time. Sometimes it's a little scary in that the worlds that they're getting into, because as a parent, you feel like you're less able to step in. When they were 10 years ago, something went wrong, you just come in and be dad. But now it's like it's almost to a point where like I gotta let you fail a little bit. I have to let you experience
on your own.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure. Yeah, go ahead.
You how many are going to be like in a row, like 18, 19, 20, like how many in a row? Or how many?
It's pretty much just one will be 24 in January, one just turned 22, and my youngest is again 21. So 20. So 22 months apart. I got started a little late on this thing. I didn't have kids until after 30. I was 30 when we had our first, and we knew we weren't, I didn't want to have an 18-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Right.
The plan was we were going to have these kids, and then I was going to get snipped, and the shop is closed. So that was all of this was planned out. The only caveat would have been if I would have got the boy-girl split, we may not have gone to put a third.
Right.
So the third was like, okay, we're going to try this one more time. If it doesn't pan out, then it just, this is what God intended for us to have. And so I closed the shop, and so just had the girls. So it was exciting, raising them all together like that. But even then, you had to have boundaries. You had to have levels. So it's like my youngest one, she was always the last to get something. And it's weird because they all grew up together. So why can't I have it also? It's like, well, when you turn 12, you can get this. When you turn 14, you can get this. When you turn 16, you can get this. Even though the other two girls were ahead of her, and she just couldn't stand just being felt left back. But everybody had to have a time when we felt you were ready for it. So that was probably for her, that was like the frustrating thing, seeing her sisters get things that she didn't qualify for. Even though so much of their lives was sort of grouped together and did everything together, but we still had those boundaries.
Right. Part of the reason I was asking is because people in your situation, they get this heavy dose of it. So you're going to get like a boom, 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 like a heavy. It's not like, well, we have one more for another 4 years. We have another one for another 8 years in the house. It's a heavy boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I think for us, probably the biggest adjustment was when, um, and really is my wife who had the biggest adjustment because again she had 3 kids under age 5,
Mm.
and that was that could get heavy,
Hmm.
and certainly I had to do some maturing myself as a husband to understand that
Hmm.
sometimes you felt like you wanted your wife and she just wasn't mentally or even just time wise just available to you
Right.
because the young girls they had needs, but I still hadn't I felt, well, I still have needs as a husband. And
Hmm.
so how do you manage that, and how do you be more understanding of that in that scenario? So I think that was a maturing time for me to understand that, look, I need to be more supportive in terms of what she was dealing with. And then you hear a
Yep.
lot of guys in these spaces, they talk about what they expect their wives to be at any given. But again, as you go through the periods of life from being single with no kids, we used to call them dinks, double income, no kids, to
Mm.
having kids, to having teenagers, to whatever, just all these
Right.
transitions of life. It just definitely taught me that marriage is about not so much a snapshot in time, but it's a
Right.
movie that plays out, and it's going to have ebbs and flows, and it's going to have things you have to flexibility and agility is
Yeah.
is is something that's going to be vital if you want to have something long term. So like I said, so we all had that period of time where we had to grow up and have some of that mutual understanding. But
Right.
but yeah,
Hmm.
but so far like I said, we're seeing some light, at the end. But we still try to be available to them, and as long as they, we can have influence with them, we want to keep that line open so they can come to us with whatever they need.
Right. Okay. There are a lot of couples that I work with who actually, when they reach that point, usually with either with work and like, okay, we're going to raise the kids, work and retire,
Hmm.
or just have each other. And one of the problems they've run into consistently, I hear this: we start as a couple, and then we start bringing in kids,
Right.
3, 4, whatever. And then it's not always the mom. It's not always the mom, but the division, like there starts a division where we'll just say, one of my fingers, we'll just say, it feels this way. It feels like my wife and I have some division,
Right.
not no bad things, but and then she's either very close to the kids or it's almost like 3 islands. But we'll just say usually the parents are a little closer to the kid, and then now when the kids are gone, here's how we are.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
now it takes time just for us to do this.
Exactly.
And are we still aligned? Do we still have the same dreams, goals? And so I don't know if you experienced any of that or if you were able to
Actually,
make
not
something good.
later. We got better, I think as time went on. I think, I think
Uh-huh.
the early years when it was just like literally you were changing diapers, you were
Right.
keeping kids out of trouble. What The older they got, I think the better it got for us because, we felt like, we needed to be on one page, to have a house full of women, you need to be on the same page on a lot of things. And I
Mhm.
needed to, again, be able to support her, that there was no separation between my wife and I when it came to them. Cause, they would definitely try to play the sides against one another. They try to
Right.
say, go ask your dad, go ask your mom. What did mom
Yeah.
say? So
Yeah.
you had to keep that tight knit almost as a strategy, you know,
Yeah.
um, to prevent from being manipulated like that. So,
Yeah.
so I think it got better for us. I think the older that they got, and so
Mhm.
and really with COVID, we came through that probably just as good, if not stronger than ever. Unfortunately, we knew a lot of couples who got divorced
Mhm.
coming out of
Yeah.
COVID, and
Yeah.
and so that was a shock to us. But we didn't feel well, we're seeing each other all the time, we each other's spaces and whatnot. No, we
Mhm.
felt very
Mhm.
comfortable with one another still, and
Right.
so that wasn't we didn't feel any stress
Right.
during the COVID time. So I think really it was just those early years, I'd say up until they got to school age. And when they
Right.
went to school, it's fine because my wife, she was home for the first almost 7 years. Like she was
Mhm.
just a domestic. I mean,
Okay.
so it was constant. I went out and worked and whatnot. But once the kids got back to school and she was able to get back into the workforce and I guess start to forge a little bit of her own, identity to an extent. I think things really started to improve at that point. But those early years of just, you're just keeping them from hurting themselves or each other,
Right.
or the screaming or the crying or the
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had to do some maturing there to make sure that she was going to be whole in that situation. So that
Yeah.
was really early on, yeah, but it got better as when, and I got better in part also because I always felt that my role as a parent would be more useful later. I never was the father who was like, I want to get the tea set out and have tea with you and make believe and things like that. I
Yeah.
always looked at myself as like when I had teenagers, because I did a lot of things in my church, youth ministry, teenagers, and things like that. And I always liked working with the teens and the young adults, the college age. I always had just an affinity there
Yeah.
because it was at that age that they really started asking questions, especially in the church, asking questions about faith and religion. Like, what is all like, when a kid, they're young, you just kind of do what your parents told you to do. You go to church because they wanted to. But now it's to the point where it's like they're starting to ask questions, why be doing all this stuff?
Right.
And I always thought that in asking questions, if you handle it properly, it helps them get to better destinations. When you can give them things again, perspectives to think about. So I always look forward to, like, I wanted to have the sex conversation with them. Like, I actually look forward. I mean, a lot of dads scares dads to death. I don't want to talk to my kids about sex. I look forward to that
Yeah.
because I understood that, look, my job as a parent is to get you to adulthood.
Right.
And so since, so I never wanted to go away from that. And it was something that someone had told me years ago, and it just stuck with me. Talk about the role of a mother and a father, at least figuratively anyway, because, obviously we have kids who don't grow up with either one of them.
Right.
But the thought process was that mothers protect, but fathers prepare. And the analogy that was used was, let's say you're at the park with your kid 6, 7 years old, he's on the swing or the jungle gym or whatever, and they fall down and they start crying. And the mother's energy is like, oh, let me go and coddle my baby. Hey, it's okay, whatnot. And the dad is like, okay, you fell, shake it off, get back on there. Because you
Right.
don't want them to develop a fear of that swing or that apparatus or whatever.
Right.
Now, he's asking who is right in that situation. And the answer was they're both right. It just depends on a lot of it depends on timing. There's a time to protect, but then there's a time to prepare and
Right.
to start letting go and start letting them learn on their own and deal with adversity and how to overcome that. But if you just coddle your kids all the time, they're not going to, you're not forming well-adjusted adults. So I think there's something that I reached out to BlackMan about possibly doing a show about this because we talked about it last week. That are we not doing enough, especially with boys? Are we not doing enough to prepare boys for manhood to the extent where when should the young boy take over? You know what I mean? It's like it started with me just as just a question. It's like, should there be a time where your son should be able to kick your butt?
Right.
And
Right.
you're not 80-year-old and
Yeah.
I'm going like warrior class. I'm going
Yeah.
like, if you're talking about preparing the next generation,
Yeah.
it should come to a point in time where you should be able to kick your dad's butt.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, son, it's almost like the master in those martial arts. If you can take this coin out of my hand,
Yeah.
then you can leave, right?
Right.
And
Right.
I just think that sometimes it's like, sometimes as parents, we want to still be on top, still be right. And,
Right.
if we want functioning adults who want to take over and run the world after, the idea was they're supposed to be better than us.
Right.
So if we're not raising our kids to be better than us, then are we doing them a disservice by coddling them too much or looking to protect them too much? There should be some, yes, there should be respect, but there should be a time when they say, okay, my son, my daughter, here you go. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering about, are we doing too much where we're not letting kids to grow up? And I think
Right.
about that movie Fences. or the play. I know it's a play in the movie.
Denzel and yeah.
Exactly. And I'm just thinking about that relationship between him and his son. And, I always thought to myself, he raised a very weak son and he did it that way.
Right.
You know what I mean, it's like, you didn't raise your son to like, when they finally had that kind of fight or pseudo fight or whatever they had. I mean, that son wasn't ready. I mean, so you weren't even raising him to be, better than you or to pass you. You wanted him to be inferior. You wanted him to be intimidated by you. And I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to be raising kids, especially boys. Right. If you truly want them to be able to go out there and conquer and be productive and not fearful of anything, but they still have that fear of you. I wrestle with that a little bit because I know, especially with the Black community, fathers and how mothers do stuff. All I don't care. The thing was, I don't care. I could be years old. I'm still your mama.
Right.
And so so those are things that that have been in my mind space. That I'm wrestling with, and that I'm thinking about, just with my girls. Just get back to some of the questions that you asked. Again, making sure that they're prepared.
Right.
So
I'm sorry. I just gonna jump in real quick. Give some shout outs. Nightish is in the building. Thank you for swinging through and being here. We appreciate you. Grooming and Reviews is in swinging through is in the house. Thank you for being here. Hello. Mrs. She Said and the Tribe is in the house. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And Crystal Light is in the house. Thank you for being here. As you can see, Coach K has darkened her skin and her hair.
Most importantly, she shaved her head. That's
she shaved to be part of the brother.
Her head.
Yes. But Coach K is not with us tonight. For whoever's listening in, she has some good news and things going on with her family. So we wish her well and happiness and blessings to the event. And I'll let her share when she comes back. Brother Bennett has joined us tonight, taking some time to come in and pinch hit or join me, do this together. And CBN is in the background in the channel. So welcome everyone for being here. Please be sure to hit the like button. And tonight's topic, and let me see what's on the screen still. It should be, about anger. So being about anger. Now, Coach K was going to offer some coaching strategies. And even though she's not here, I still wanted to keep up with the momentum about the anger topic. Sure. Now, Brother Bennett, here's one thing, and I think this happens on so many channels or networks or shows. The topic, so because you and I are having a good conversation and I like it, and then I'm already eager to like ask you more questions, like how did you and your wife, like was that previous to COVID that you made an agreement, like not even knowing COVID? Did you make an agreement? Like, hey, times are hard, so I wanted to ask you that. I want to talk to you about your sons, and I love that question. When you could take this out of my hand, when the wisdom, right, or even the gangsters, because those shows, and in real life too, where the son feels like the father's moving too slow with like not responding, where you make us look weak, then the sons want to. So I want to get into that. But here's where the challenge is, and this is what I think happens on a lot of shows. The title, and I know you and I were just talking, but it dawned on me, reminded me, the titles say one thing, and then the conversations end up going way left, way right. True. And and that happened to me the other day. The topic, I was on Talk That Tuesday. The title, about brothers being deleted. Right. About brothers being deleted. So I was all excited and ready to address that, but the conversations are rich. Yeah. And then there's so many questions, but then the questions go away from the title, and then it's like, oh man, did I miss the boat? And so tonight, because that title is up about anger, I want to get to some of those questions. I think you asked some very good questions. And for anyone who was listening and they already started the process, I don't know how much you caught, Brother Bennett, with the stuff I was doing up here about mapping this out, and then the books that I'm going to be speaking from. Helping women recover and helping men recover. Now, before we get into, hey, what is their gender? A gender, it doesn't matter. It should just be people recovering. Right. But there are significant psychological, physical, different events and things that happen for each. And at the time they wrote these, it was about the two separate. A lot of stuff is going to be coming from this stuff, seeking safety on some of the shows when I talk about trauma and and incidents that happen. It doesn't always have to be abuse,
Mhm.
but it does come from if we believe our safety was at risk, and then we grow into that. Which
Right.
reminds me, I was going to ask you about your daughters, and even that birds and the bees conversation, and then even with the sons. And then this is trauma-informed interventions. So some of the stuff will be coming out of here, mainly about interventions. And Coach K is going to do some stuff, some coaching stuff like how to work through anger.
Right.
So that's where most of the stuff is going to be coming from. So speaking of the birds and the bees, and even with your sons.
Well, I don't have any sons. I don't have any sons.
I mean, that's right. The son question of
Right.
when the handing of the mantle.
Right.
So question, because sex in itself, like that whole thing of parents at some point should talk to their kids. And I know the Seds family, lately they've been talking about, I mean, they've always been talking about it, but a more sharp, intentional focus on conscious parenting.
Mhm.
And so when you think about, man, at some point, someday, I should be having these conversations. And how I'm going to tie this into anger or emotions. Did you feel that you landed that conversation at the right time? Did you go first? Did you pass it? Was it too late? Because some kids are not saying your kids were sexual, but they can catch it on TikTok. They can catch the message earlier. Did you run into any of like someone beat you to it?
Well, I think with all the things that you're talking about, the outside influences that they have access to, I don't think I had necessarily a choice in the matter. And I guess my thing was I would rather give it to you a little bit earlier than later.
Right.
So when just the popular culture that that they're growing up in, it became apparent to me pretty early on that I need to have this conversation. Certainly by the time they hit puberty, if not prior to that. And the crazy thing about that was they didn't want to hear it from me. So it was like, oh, Dad, so this was still ick. I mean, I can't even kiss my wife without, even today they kind of go ick when we kiss.
Yeah.
So, it was definitely something I just felt I was kind of I didn't have any emotion in it as far as when the right time was. I just knew that the conversation needed to be had. And like case well, like my wife to this day, she's uncomfortable with the conversation still. And so that's the thing. So I knew, okay, well, they're not going to get it from you. So it was just a logical thing with me. And I've always tried to say, well, what is necessary? What is necessary will always take precedence over what is convenient or what is comfortable or what have you. I'm not shying away from the stuff that needs to be said. Out of my own thoughts or fears of, okay, well, if I give them this, then they may go off and do whatever. I think as a parent, I think there's duties that come with that. Yeah, and I wasn't going to shirk them.
Right. How old were you? Did you get that conversation as a kid? Never.
Well, actually, my dad I would think I might have been about 13, 14 years old. He was a little bit inebriated, which was his thing to do. And he kind of gave me the conversation as cruelly as you can possibly make it.
Yeah.
I won't
like
be moved. What's that?
Like the scare tactic? Like the
No, he just said, this is, son, the woman has something that looks like this, and your thing goes right in there. I mean, it wasn't presented in a
let's talk
wholesome environment. And like I said, he had a little of the spirits in him. And my dad is like, he gets a little something in him, and anything can come out at any given time in any place. So if you did,
do you know if was he ever given that conversation? Do you know?
I seriously doubt it. My man's from the deep South. He's from Southwest Georgia.
Yeah.
And that whole generation there was a lot of kids. He came from 13 kids. My mom came from 9 kids. And there was just in that world, there was a lot of things that were going on. People weren't certainly as chaste as, sometimes what they're portrayed to be. But he knew a lot, at the time. My mom got married at 18. So they, they were, certainly they were very much aware, but just certain conversations you just didn't have. But there's things that were done. There were things that were done in the barn that nobody,
Talk right.
That was a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. All right, hold on. Trey F is in the building. What's up? Bald head knowledge rocking. Yes. We're rocking in the house tonight. So welcome, Trey F. Thank you for being here. So tonight's topic is anger, and Coach K will again offer some more tips when she comes back. So staying on topic though, but using this actually information, interesting because Brother Bennett, there's I think generationally there's been a desire to want to teach, or we didn't talk about that. So back in the day, grandparents, even if a tampon commercial came on, they didn't like, right?
Yeah.
So then, but almost said the idea of sex, but sex has gone back forever, and then since the beginning of man, and the teaching, so either people were taught, like the bird, they had those conversations, or you just kind of figured it out, like it happened.
For sure.
So then I wonder, well, why did people want to start having the conversation? What was that about?
Well, I think, just looking at it historically, I do think there was I think Christianity in part, or religion in part, I think had somewhat to do with that, especially the major ones. In that you had, because I'm always interested in like what, given that we're Black and we have African ancestry like that, like what was ancient Africa like in terms of, or ancient civilizations, the Native American, the Inuit tribes and peoples, like what were their views on a lot of these topics, especially sex in general. And you see it a lot of times, like it was in their art, it was in their, you look at ancient Chinese art and whatnot, and you had depictions, pornography was, documented very early in civilization and the Egyptians and everybody there. But I think, there was a bit of a sort of a puritanical view that came certainly with Christianity and with, with Islam that, wanted to kind of restrict that to an extent. And I think a lot of societies where that might have been liberal, like, even when it came just to clothing, to dress, nudity, I think at one point in time wasn't as taboo. But then you had, puritanical dress standards in terms of what was decent, what was considered, proper for the environment. Yeah. And so I think for a long time, so over the last 500 years, I think there's certainly been that influence that has, made people more conservative when it came to such matters. And I think it's almost like the pendulum is trying to swing back the other way, where people are saying, hey, this is, as to your earlier point, this is part of being a human being. This is natural. This is wholesome. This is part of, this is, biology. And you shouldn't necessarily be shunting that. But then some of the measures, okay, when do you teach it? I think we had an earlier show talking about, in schools, when do you give it to kids and what manner do you give it to kids? What is proper, what is not? Should parents be involved? So I think everyone's still trying to work this stuff out. So I definitely think there was a little bit of an ice age, if you will, where things would kind of cool down. Hey, let's tempt this this talk down. But I think people are finally starting to understand, and still this country is even ahead of us, like in Europe. Now, I think I was just watching a video recently about, sex education in Europe, especially in Germany and whatnot. Kids learn very early about these things, and it's not but America is kind of like schizo in that that we're puritanical on one end, but then we're pornographic on one end. We got like a Jekyll, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde to us. We either go too far or too strict. So we're still figuring some things out.
All right, what these things I was talking about, these lines and anger. I say, sex has been, well, we all know sex has been around from the beginning of time.
Right.
And either you figure it out or you don't. But then I think there was a generation that wanted something specific to be known about, not just the birds and bees, but something specific, in addition to another generation feeling duped, like I didn't know. Now, the few clients that I've had with the opportunity, the few, because usually the great grandparents are gone, the few great grandparents I've talked to, I've heard a mixture between, yeah, I should have said something, but you just didn't back in that time. We just didn't. And I feel so bad. They actually feel sorry for the great grandkids. I mean, they feel bad that they didn't have a more active role. We didn't have those conversations. So now they wish they would have because of the consequences.
Right.
And the people that they say that to, so let's say great grandkids. So their grandkids are hearing this and they start making agreements to avoid like, I don't want to be like grandma, grandpa. I don't want to have these resentments later.
Yeah.
So then they build these agreements that when we have kids, or instructing, when you guys have kids, you're going to have to tell them one day about the birds and the bees.
Right.
And I think each generation, because the act of sex itself has gone back forever, all kinds of sex. Yeah. But what was embarrassing? They ain't never told me about they ain't never told me about the anal stuff.
Right.
I'm gonna be sure when I talk to my kids. So sometimes there was something very specific that they wanted to, but anal's has happened since the beginning of time.
Right.
And then one more, and I'll turn it over back to you. So in my day, when HIV came on the scene, people were panicking that you could just get it from touching someone. You can drink. So it was not only sex, but it was like, don't even kiss. Yeah. The birds and bees conversation was, do not touch anything. If you perform oral on the woman, use a dental dam.
Yeah.
Right. And then the whole thing was, whatever you do, use protection. Don't even kiss. Don't even hug. If you use your fingers, you had to make sure, like your cuticles. I mean, like your if you take it out,
you have the dirt under your nails.
The dirt, and if you bleed. So like if you pick to the point where you bleed, but that's an opening. So then you couldn't even digitally play with someone, or what we call playing with your fingers down there.
Right.
You can't even do that because you risk an opening for the body fluids. So the big push wasn't for. I'll show you how an example of how it shifts. So the big push for that conversation was more about make sure you don't catch HIV. Right. When HIV, I won't say it died down. When the medicine came out, when it's you can live longer, you can. Then the fear of it became less, and now we have people saying, "Yeah, they'll figure it out." But aren't you concerned about having your kids catch a disease? Don't you want to tell them how to have safe sex? There ain't nobody dying. They'll boom, boom, boom. So the urge, the birds and the bees, based on crisis, disease, warning, has shifted. And I just think every generation has a shift. Yeah. What do you think of that?
Well, yeah, but I never thought that the scary route of like, or anytime you're teaching from a fear base, I've never found to be effective. And in a lot of respects, especially with what I see with young people today, it's almost like you embrace it. It's almost as if the risk involved is oftentimes like a rush for people. Like, and I'm always using the cookie jar analogy. It's like, I told you not to go into that cookie jar, but then automatically in your mind, you're like, what's in that cookie jar?
What's about the cookie jar? Yeah.
It's just something that's there.
Yeah.
So I never bought into the fear tactic that you'll get this, you'll grow another set of arms, whatever it is, or your stuff will fall off, or your hair will fall out, or all those things have just never been effective. But again, a lot of that is just coming out of ignorance, because again, you just don't know how to address the topic, or we just have, my thing is how do we help people just come to like just a base of embracing really humanity? Like, can we start there?
Right.
And then with that embrace of what's human, what's natural, what's wholesome.
Right.
If we want to set some parameters in terms of how you engage with it, and that's something we can add on to it. But we're just having the problem just getting down to like,
basic humanity.
Yeah, because I mean, the fact that as a husband and wife, like now our kids have told us, yeah, we heard you guys the other night, and I'm like, yeah, that's what
Yeah,
we do, but we never were like, don't do too loud, the kids may hear us or whatever.
right.
We just do what we do, and I tell them, this is what married people do,
Yeah,
and so in a way, I'm always building that expectation, in their mind. It's like, yeah, married people have sex. This is what we do. This is
yeah,
one reason we even got married. So I've always
yeah,
tried to, so in this particular area, I'm just hoping that, people can come to a sense of normalcy, that
yeah,
there's a normalcy to this,
right.
that we can start from there versus, you know, the worst of the worst of the worst of situations that can happen to you and whatnot, and create an environment where people can have the conversation. Because again, even adults, I mean, we got couple friends, like, we don't talk to friend couples about our sex lives. Like, we're not, there's no one that my wife and I will want to have that conversation. Now, again, I would be willing to have it.
Yeah,
My wife, absolutely. If you say anything about, I got to be even careful in these spaces here.
yeah,
How much I share, but
yeah,
even just amongst adults or married people, or quote unquote those who are doing it legally,
right.
just in that space. I've been to marriage ministry meetings where, the topic has come up, and again, it seemed like it's being done from again, a kindergarten level,
Yeah,
or they're talking about roses and flowers and let the flower bloom and whatnot. It's like, no, we're talking about sex here. I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and we
yeah,
can't. I can't even get around some grown folks and
right.
just have a real conversation. Now, some dudes I might be able to get, but in couple sessions,
Yeah,
it's rare where you get people who can just be, that transparent,
right.
not to judge anybody or whatever, but possibly gain some perspective. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so we just, as just people, and again, I can only just speak for those in America, but we just got a lot of just a lot of things that we're just trying to shake off. But I
Right.
think that comes from, again, hundreds of years of how it's been presented.
Mhm.
But I'm just curious about how ancient societies, how they,
How they did.
how they did it. Like I said, Native Americans and, ancient Africans and
Yeah,
Asians and whatnot. There seems that like I said, it's definitely in there because we have the writings and we have the
yeah,
pictures and the
right,
hieroglyphs and things of that nature. So it was very much part of the culture,
right.
but
Now, and it's interesting you say that, and again, I'm a laser in a little bit more on the use of anger, even in these in this context.
mhm,
It's interesting you say that because so one, what is normal? Because what is normal to you may not be normal to me, and we all have at least the link through forensic psychology, or it doesn't have to be forensic psychology. Excuse me. One of the ways that we teach it through to our offenders is that each person has what's called a pretend normal, like it's their
mm,
normal. And so I go to work in the morning at 6 a.m.
right,
It's not that I'm faking it, but my pretend normal is I get up in the morning. And when I talk about it, I talk about it as in everyone should get up in the morning. Everyone should be a morning person. There's no way in the bed you should still, no way in the bed, no way in the world you should be in the bed still at 7 a.m. There's
right,
no way in the world you should. And I'm actually projecting my
yeah,
belief system based on my pretend normal. And then you take someone who's an evening person and their pretend normal is no, you don't get up making all that racket and noise. He's like nothing should be happening before 9 o'clock, man. I don't even want to. And sometimes that's where the clash is.
yeah,
Our individual programming, our belief, and then we'll start fighting against other people's beliefs based on normal. What is normal? What is not?
right,
Only to find out it's been in the history,
yeah,
like these same debates about what is normal and what is not, or what is the practice, has been in the history for decades. I mean, for was it BC,
yeah,
AC, and
millennia. It's been out there.
right,
I think part of it also has to do with just, I think, the connectiveness. I think in a lot of areas, where cultures are connect, the world, we say, is so much smaller now. where again you would, we came from tribes, right? I mean, or small packs, and there might have been a reason why we had to have a pack mentality, a group think, to protect our tribal survive. It was like a survival instinct that we had to preserve.
Yeah.
But now with the world being so connected, where we have this intersection of so many societies and cultural views, even foods that we can. I mean, I was just at office today. We had a sort of like a pre-Thanksgiving get together, and there was so many diverse. I mean, foods I never even had before. That were just there. That again, going back a millennia ago, I might have looked at what that is. It's like, that doesn't look right. That's not food. What are you guys eating? Oh, that's disgusting or whatever. But now people are cultures and whatnot. There's so much intersection there that I think that's the conversation that we're having, and it's happened really probably over the last 100 years, really, where you've had the ability for this global travel and access to information through the internet or what have you. There's so much that it's hard to define, because normal, I think to your earlier point, was defined by the tribe, or defined by that small village or community setting. And the thing about it too was that stayed there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Like the norms of how people functioned. It was almost like a copy. It was like a repeat. It's like your dad was a farmer or a carpenter or whatever, and then it was just assumed, like there was no thought about you doing something else.
Right.
Your life was simply just a photocopy of the generation before you, because everything was just repeated. And so again, even more so emphasizing that sense of what is normal in a person. But now I can easily go and just look at how a whole different set of people live, and I can look at that and I can say, "Ooh, that doesn't seem right to me." That or I can say, what, actually that's pretty cool. Actually, I never thought about that, and hey, I might want to even implement some of that. So I think that I just think that the times that we're in, with the connections that we're seeing, this global sharing of information, is the what is normal is being challenged on a lot of fronts.
Yes,
and it's up, and a lot of people are still struggling with that.
Yes, it shakes things up. One of the things I put up here about anger, judgment. People feel judged.
Yeah.
Now, pending how I receive something, listening to what you just said, if you are a farmer, grandpa, dad's a farmer, it's an automatic thing where I believe I'm voluntold I'm a farmer.
Yeah.
And I know Scam Likely, every once in a while, he talks about, sorry for that noise. I know Scam talks about that he calls it traditional parenting robs people of choice. So I'm voluntold that I'm going to be a farmer. Then you get the pushback, because now they say, well, technology. So I'm just in this room here. I'm just in this training room here.
Right.
But let's say this is my world and this is all I know.
Yes.
If anyone coming to change this, I'm going to fight them on it.
Yeah.
And then anyone I invite into here, so you have all these chairs. So my tribe, my whatever,
right.
We all believe in what's in this room and only in this room.
Right.
But then they say technology, like you can now see what's in a lot, or you can see what's across the world. So to open the door of the possibilities changes things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, this just even to peek out to like kind of just see what the possibilities are. Then certain parents, they get upset if you cross the threshold. Why are you going against everything that our family has been about?
Right.
Because you stepped out. And some parents who say, go discover the world. And so I just think that's it's awesome that it happened, but now I'm exploring. And the parent who's working in regret, who's stuck in regret, like, they're going to learn too quickly. You have to be careful. And then they start giving the instructions. Well, when you go out there, when you do, which is still a form of, do I get to be me? Or you bring me out and then you just guide me. You just tell me you're going this way. You're going this way. I don't give a damn what you say. You're going this way. No, you go because I said so. You're going this way. You're going this way.
Yeah.
So that I really get to explore, or am I just doing it your way? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Nah, it's very true. And I think especially in today's world, again, I think you're seeing how many shows have been in this space talking about certainly going back at least to, I mean, we don't talk about the greatest generation anymore, but the baby boomers to the Gen Zers, right? And this fundamental change in terms of how they see the world versus the world that we came up in. I mean, you and I think we're both Gen X, I believe. And the idea that um again, the opportunities that we had were not necessarily what they have access to, and that desire to keep things together, because again we still have this, again, this tribal mentality that every, what is preserved and got us to this point is worthy of preserving. But for a lot of the younger people, they're just not embracing it. um I've shared this on a few shows. I was at a gathering with a family from Sierra Leone. My oldest daughter, she's besties with a girl who's from that lineage. So we went to a party, and you could definitely feel when you got there. There was um, you felt the history, you felt the culture, you felt the norms there, the in terms of how the people interacted, the languages being spoken, the tribal center you had. And I've seen this with a lot of African peoples, where there's like the men sort of huddle in an area, and there's like an OG who's there, who's kind of like, the wise man, so to speak. He's kind of giving knowledge, and everyone's just sitting around. You may not even be saying anything, but they are certainly in that they're in that sort of collaboration. So, but you felt the richness. There was certainly a sense of community. So I was having a conversation with the daughter and her sister, who was at the table with us, and I was just trying to learn a little bit, because I not know much about the country of Sierra Leone and the people, and how they did things were. So I was just asking some cultural questions, and then it got to the point of marriage, and I said, so when do women typically get married? And they said, oh, about 26, 27. And so I said, okay, so in about 5 years or so expect this, because there was a lot of girls there, a lot of cousins. And so I said, okay, so in a few years there's going to be a lot of weddings just popping off, because everybody's going to be around that age or whatnot. So, and there's like, oh no, because they're not even thinking about marriage at this point. It's the option that, this is something that you have to do, is something that, they're about their career, or that, the opportunities that are in front of them right now. Most of them don't speak the language, or at least they don't speak the language very well. They can understand it. And that's always been something that's always I found funny. Something like out of Star Wars, or something like Han Solo talking to Chewbacca, because the parents, they can be going yelling at him, screaming at him in whatever the language is, in Haitian Creole, or whatever the language is. To say, yeah, mom, okay, mom, I'll do it. What? No, I didn't say that, mom. And they're
Right.
going back and forth. It's like, you understand everything,
Yeah.
but to speak it, they have no thing. So there's already been a divide in the language, which I think is certainly something that we talk about, that preservation or that tribal mentality. Language has always been something that has certainly brought people together. But now with the expansion of English being the dominant language of business and
Next,
commerce,
worldwide. Right.
just
Worldwide.
all these things, it's like that is something that's being stripped away from, I guess, certainly from people's sense of identity. What does it mean to be whatever the ethnicity is?
Right.
That is something that is no longer shared anymore. So you don't have the language, history. You could take it, especially if you grew up here, whether you be from India, whether you be from Africa, whatever. The way you embrace things is like, look, I'm in America, so American history must be, what I came from. You're not trying to hear from your parents what happened in
Right.
Africa or India years ago. So that's going. So all of these things that have held societies together primarily based on region and locale
Right.
are being stripped away to such a degree that people are having a hard time with the sense of identity.
Right.
Who am I and what do I want to be? Whereas, as we said earlier, in the past, it was defined for you. But now people are saying, no, I want to write my own story. I want to determine my own destiny.
Definitely.
And so so the idea of the individual over the tribe or the community or the country, even, because I've always looked at this in terms of, almost like imagine like a telescope. If you zoom you zoom in enough, you can see in individuals the difference. Like you and I, right? We can look and clearly see that we're different. Yes, we share the baldness, but we're not the same.
Right.
But if you zoom out enough, then we're black men. You zoom out enough where we're African American men. Zoom out some more where we're of African descent. You zoom out to we're human beings. So that there's a calibration that's taking place where zooming down too much into detail, it really doesn't have the same punch like it did years ago.
Right.
So I think everybody. So part of the resentment that you're getting back to your point about anger, the resentment, not only in the young people who are feeling the stress of having to live up to another generation's expectations, but even the frustration of the generation that may be hating on the young generation to an extent that you have opportunities that I never had. You're getting to do things, and that's why sometimes you get the story. When I was young, we had to walk back and forth to the store with no socks or shoes on both ways. A lot of like you're hating on the younger generation just because of the progress that's been made. I didn't have the opportunity. A lot of people, especially in baby boom and even in some parts of Gen X, feel that they didn't really have the childhood or the opportunity to have the childhood the way the kids have it now. By the time you were 12, 13, my dad's generation, by the time you were puberty, you were considered for all intents and purposes a man. Or the woman got to her puberty, she was a woman. And you were doing grown things. If you were, especially in houses where you had a lot of kids, as soon as you became 12, 13, you weren't a kid anymore. You were like the second or third mom in the house. So you didn't get to go to the parties. You didn't get the chance to go and travel. You didn't get a chance to do so. I think some of the resentment, certainly from the older generations, I think is in part due to the opportunities that are afforded to people now. That like my oldest daughter, she's been to more countries than I have in my lifetime. I'm trying to get there now, but since she graduated in 21. She's been to DR. She's been to PR. She's been to Hawaii, to Chicago. She's been to LA. I mean, she just swore. I mean, I'm going to medical school, and I know that once I start medical school, stuff's going to be shut. I'm going to be on lockdown.
Right.
She's getting all of this in because she knows that for the next 6-7 years or whatever the time is, I'm not going to be able to enjoy any of this. So she is definitely taking advantage of the time that she has before she really thinks, okay, I got to really hunker down and be about this. And I never had those opportunities of travel. So I'm not now I'm not upset about that. I'm appreciative of it. But even then, I have to modulate my tone sometimes because I'm asking myself, am I because it almost got to a point where, okay, well, you're not focused enough. It's like, yeah, you go. I'm like, man, you go on another vacation. You just went on a vacation. Where do you need to go this time? I'm checking myself to see, am I feeling this way out of a sense of I didn't get a chance to do it. So again, am I hating because she's doing it?
Right.
Or am I really concerned about, hey, you need to be saving your money. You need to be getting focused. Am I, so what is I've had to challenge myself in terms of what is my motivation? And if I need to speak to them about, the next steps in their lives, is this coming from a place where I'm totally focused on them, or am I a bit jealous, a bit envious? or the fact that they're doing things that so I think that's certainly something that can happen with older generations, and I think younger generations feeling frustrated because they're feeling the pressure to have to conform to a cultural or community standards. And again, I work in the IT field. I have a lot of friends who are Asian Indian, and we've had conversations recently about because my kids grew up basically with their kids,
right?
And so,
let me jump in there real quick. Sorry.
Sure.
All right. So we have a couple shout outs. We have Lady Navoa in the house. Thank you for being here as always. Dragonfly Jones' cousin. Last time I slighted you by accident. I said, thanks everyone. Good night. Good night. And didn't even, man, my bad. So Dragonfly, thank you for being here as always. And the Ghost OGJ Speed is in the house. What's up? What's up? Good to see you again. And actually, there is a question for you, and whoever at CBN can put it up here in a minute. But before we get to that question, I want to highlight more. Just want to remind people what we're doing today. Coach K is not here, and she had some good news going on in her family. So we'll celebrate that news when she comes back. And so we are together. The Bald Clan is in the house. Mr. Bennett has joined. So we can still go ahead with the show. The topic is about anger. And I was just telling Mr. Bennett, and for those who follow the network, so the true network followers, and if you're brand new, welcome. Please make sure you hit the like button on your way in, now that you're here. And one of the things that came to my attention most recently, I thought about it, but I really struggled. So if you're a true fan of the network, this week's shows, we'll Talk That Talk Tuesday, with very, very good collection of the brothers who represent this network. I'm also proud to be part of that network. I was so excited about that particular show and the topic about humans, about death of our Black brothers. And it was interesting what you just said, Mr. Bennett, because, as you move out the scope, like you see the globe, then you get a little closer, then you see the ocean, then you get a little closer, all the way down to the room. So when you think about it that way, there's so many topics that come up in any show. Like when I listen to the shows, I'm like, what does that have to do with the topic? And so when I get into clashes, it's because as a researcher, guess what I'm doing? I'm locked in on a topic,
right?
And I'm researching that topic. And so a lot of times when I think about when I'm on the Friday show, when I'm on any different show, even on other networks, when they're going left or right, and then I challenge someone, it may come off as disingenuous, but it's really about how is that related to the topic.
Yeah.
And so I realize I get caught because I even read some of the responses on different shows. Sir Hale's show. One time we were going on and on and on and on. And I'm like, what's that? And so I look at the topics and people are like, well, you didn't. But that's the challenge. I think it's a challenge for any network if you post, and that's why the description is very helpful. When you post a certain topic and you veer from it, those who came for the topic feel, okay, when are we going to get back on topic? Mm-hmm. And then if you have a conversation about the topic, I think those things should be announced. So I just want to say for those who've been listening to me and following the network and supporting Coach K and I, that I'm making a greater effort to look at how far away from the actual description and topic do we go, and how much do we help to bring it back in, which may sometimes feel like, why are you cutting that person off, or why are you, and it's really about accountability to the topic. So just one person or two people don't feel like they're addressing one topic while everyone else is addressing a different topic.
Yeah, I hear you.
So tonight's topic is about anger, but as you hear, we're having a very rich, healthy conversation here about family, about how times have changed. And one of the challenges for those who just joined us, I was presenting to Mr. Bennett is, well, how much have they really changed? If you go way, way, way back in time, and Mr. Bennett was saying, yeah, this stuff was written in the walls, the art, the language, this stuff goes back AC, BC, blah, 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 blah. We were even talking about sex. How far does that go back? To the Roman Empire, to this, to that. Sex has been around forever. So it's interesting when you have a new family, a new generation saying, ooh,
I'm going to have to talk about the birds and the bees, and that's going to be a tough conversation. Just tell them to watch YouTube, huh? But 40, 50, 60 years ago, even if it was on YouTube or the TV, tampon commercial comes on and parents are like, grandparents, parents are like, yeah, we don't talk about that here. So times have changed, but the actual events in life haven't changed. Mr. Bennett, when you said, when I want to capture that piece, the travel. So how much, when it comes to emotions and feeling out of control, in control, feeling like we have some say so, no say so, helpless or hopeless, pending how we manage that, that can lead to anger, which the root of anger is feeling inconvenienced. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I didn't get this opportunity. Now I'm going to make that opportunity for my child. I didn't get that opportunity.
I would probably use another term.
Yeah, not saying you. No, I'm saying
I get you. I get you. Just generally, for me, I would almost choose inadequate, not inconvenienced.
Yeah,
but inadequate.
Okay, so a tire pops. You have may pop tires. They may pop at any time, and you're heading to work. Right. You're heading to work, and it pops. But it was timely, and you had already been written up about being on time. And of all the times of the times of the times, this is the worst time to have a flat tire.
Right.
Are you feeling inadequate or are you feeling inconvenienced?
It could be both, but definitely inadequate because I'm in a position where why can I only afford may pop tires?
Woo!
And I go and get the $800 for some Michelins.
Right.
Keep my stuff up, but I'm living paycheck to paycheck. And so I go down to the local. In fact, we got a guy that go around the corner here. He'll put a tire in your car for $30. Yeah.
Right.
And you just keep living that, may pop situation or what have you.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if I was in a better financial situation, if I had a nicer, and if you're putting may pop tires on, more than likely your car isn't probably is a may start car.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you're not putting may pop tires on a 2023 vehicle of any kind.
Right.
And so I got a 1997 Honda Accord that may start one day, it may not.
Yeah.
And I'm keeping it up with may pops, and I'm just trying to survive. And the struggle or the frustration, which is never quite being able to get to where everybody else is. So now I'm seeing, so again, goes back to how we grew up. Now, again, my first car was a 1970. Remember the movie Wayne's World?
Yes.
You see Wayne's World?
Yeah, Wayne's World.
1975 Sky Blue AMC Pacer was my first car.
Yeah, the Pacer.
Yes, we used to call it the bubble. Because it was a very inside, it was an extremely roomy car, even though it looked small on the outside. It was considered a compact at the time, but it was very spacious on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And, so why is it that I'm driving this Pacer with may pop tires on it, and the other kid, he may have the latest in this time in the 80s and 90s. He's got the Honda, the 89 Honda or the Audi or back then or whatever the car, if you were driving the Audi 5000s back in the day, that was the car. In the 80s, if you drove an Audi 5000, you were the man at that point. He's got an Audi 5000. I'm driving this may pop everything.
Okay.
So I think so I think the inadequacy of I don't have enough, and I'm just trying to make it with what I got. And when I see people, when I hear these kids talk about, well, this is convenient, or my phone isn't working, or this isn't working, I got to deal with stuff, with the stuff I had to deal with.
Yeah.
That gets, I think, a lot of people, especially like I said in my generation and prior, angry, because it's like, look, you don't know what we had. You think you going through stuff.
Right.
You dealing with a lot of social, am I liked by everybody or whatever? I'm dealing with literally life or death or bread and butter situations. Can I keep the lights on? Can I keep the roof on? Can I keep the job? Can I keep the whatever? So I don't have time, so when I hear you complaining, I don't got time for it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well, see, now
So
that's the inconvenience part. But I love what you said. I had not considered the inadequate because of the situation that I'm in, where I believe I could have better, should have better, should do better. And so I love that. I might have to say uh, inconvenience, but in the words of Mr. Bennett, Brother Bennett, I am also going to add inadequate. Yes, and especially if it's not by choice. If I choose, if I'm frugal, I make $1 million, but I choose to drive the little miles.
right, absolutely,
That's choice. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so thinking about those two, and I like that. Let me see. We got a couple questions here, Mr. Bennett. Make you feel better if you can pay for your own car, right? And Jay Speed's question was, Mr. Bennett, do you really believe it's resentment, or was it the plan to make sure our children get the things that we didn't get to do?
Well, I would say that for most parents, I think it's natural to an extent. You always want your kids to do better. The question is, how do you get them to do that? And I think for a lot of us, we did make the calculus that we didn't want our kids to have it. And so I think with that, there comes some benefits, but there also comes some unintended effects, some side effects that come from that. That you may feel that your kids are not, and this is, when I came on, we were talking about this, are my kids really better off because I made their life somewhat easier than what I had it. And I think for a lot of, at least parents I've talked to in my generation, we're now starting to ask ourselves, those questions. Was easier better for them? So yeah, it's a tough thing to juggle. At least certainly giving them opportunity to do things that we didn't do is something I think a lot of us we don't regret.
Right.
But again, are they strong, or can they change a tire if they need to? Do they know how to sew if something gets broken? If they're just a lot of these skills that may not have been passed on because we thought that, okay, oh well, they're going to be better than that or whatever. They're going to make enough money where they're going to be able to just buy what they want or whatever. I think it is a question that that a lot of parents, especially once you start having these young adults who start thinking differently from you, we start to ask ourselves, did we do well by our kids by trying to make it easier on them?
Did you get? Do you get into? Well, this question sounds. Let me say it, then I'll fix it. How much of your feelings do you get caught into that? Meaning, are there the resentments? Are you angry, determined to make sure your kid does X, Y, and Z to avoid or to minimize feeling like a failure, or to live vicariously? Or, are we looking at it as I'm the victim in the situation because I failed? I believe I failed my kid. Or am I the antagonist? Like, am I the one pushing? They have to have because of my determination. Or do I let it go and say, I'm not going to have that fight. The kid knows it all. There's technology out there. There's schools, whatever. Let them do what they need to do. Where do you land in there?
I think my wife and I had this conversation probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And I think we've certainly decided whether we were feeling that way or not, as far as any regrets. I think our mindset now is that we have no regrets. We did the best what we had. Because again, especially when it comes to raising kids, you can say there's rules, there's things you should do, you should not do, or whatever. But a lot of this stuff, there's no book for this. Despite all the child books that have been written, I know in your space, I'm sure there's child psychology books and Dr. Spock and all this kind of stuff that's out there. We take comfort in the fact that we believe we did give them certainly a better, and both my wife and I comes from very dysfunctional homes. The fact that we were able to certainly have an intact marriage for the time. Again, we're in our 27th season. That we gave them an advantage on, that we didn't have to deal with they didn't have to deal with what home they were coming to home to. Was it going to be chaotic, or was it going to be, peaceful? Could that be something they could rely on? We certainly gave them educational opportunities that we certainly had similar, but they didn't have to work as hard in order to get them. And they're definitely smarter than us. I mean, my wife and we were, I think, average students at best. Maybe I might have been a little bit better, but average. But the stuff that they've been able to do, we didn't come from the genius school, so to speak. So on a lot of levels, we feel that we set a floor
nice
for them to launch off of. Where they go from that, it's really up to them. And I was telling my daughter that last week. That this is your floor. Now the adulting part, again, I can be here. Like I said, I feel less today as a parent, more of a coach / mentor, sort of role now. I'll be here for you if you need me on something, but there's just certain things that you're still going to have to work out.
Right.
I can't make you a whole person.
Right.
But I
was going to say, which is interesting because part of parenting, I was going to just say, is interesting because, at least through my lens, part of parenting does involve coaching, governing, guiding. But I think you're saying less instructional and more. You have the tools. You kind of need to do it on your own. And I'm here to bumper rails, bowling. My job now is to kind of just help keep you centered as much as we can. And really, you do your own kind of travel.
But the bumper rails are definitely off. And another thing that's also and another thing all this time as well is I talk about less of a parent. Is in a way it's kind of liberating for me because I feel less that I'm dad.
Yeah.
And I feel more like I'm Mr. Bennett or Paul.
Yeah.
My name. I don't think my name is a secret. I feel like I'm Paul.
Yeah.
Because what's also happened in this time space is I felt comfortable with sharing things about myself that I didn't think was appropriate for them to know when they were, say, 10 years ago.
Right.
Because I had to be right. I have to be dad. So I'm Batman, I'm Superman, I got my cape on.
Yeah.
I got to be this. I can't be the vulnerable Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark or whatever. I got to be Iron Man like all the time.
Yeah.
And I think at this point in my life, I feel I don't have to be that, but it still gives me an opportunity to share and to communicate and to let them know it's like, hey, I'm not just talking to be talking.
Right.
Like these are the things that I've had to do. I've been very transparent about the way I grew up, about the abuse that I suffered, about the family situations that I had to endure growing up without fear of what they think about it. Because also what's happened for me is I've come to terms with that. Probably when I turned about, I can say this, I honestly really didn't feel really good about myself, confident about myself until I hit about 40.
Right.
When I hit 40, I started looking at myself relative to the surroundings. It was like, yeah, I kind of came out pretty good on the other side, all things considered. And with each year that came after that, I started feeling better and better more about myself. So I'm to the point now where you can't shame me about the life that I had or what I've had to overcome or whatever. So I'm going to share it with you. You can feel one way or another. Now it's been positive in that my kids actually admire me more.
Yeah.
Because of the things that I've had to, that my wife and I had to overcome to get, to where we are now, and which is certainly not perfect. And, we're still pursuing, trying to be better people all the time.
Right.
But I feel, like I said, I'm comfortable in myself to say, look, here's what, I had to endure.
Yeah.
And now, just for your perspective, how you can take and run with that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. How much? So now I won't say step back, just for language purposes, a comfortable step back, let the kids be. Let's bump it up 10 years, 15 years, because you said kids are in the 20s, bump it up whatever number of years they have children. and their children, your grandchildren, you see them dancing on the table, doing the twerking, and what, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, they probably even doing it but is pure sexual innuendo. Now, what I'm asking is because of this, like, allowance. Hey, girls, you've got it. You're adults now. As a grandparent, are you not? I'm not talking about you and mama are babysitting, and now your papa. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you actually see your daughters with their kids, your grandkids. They're doing this. What do you step back and just say, I wouldn't do it if it were, how much do you engage?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I've always looked at it like I've never been a big fan of kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, people bring a baby around and say, "Oh, it's a nice baby. Hey, let me hold the baby and whatnot," or you know, young kids. I've never been, but I truly believe that there's a program. You talked about
Yeah.
programs, Joe. I think there's a parent program. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a dad program. I think there's a mom program.
Mm-hmm.
That program, like I said, I think is retiring. It's going on the shelf. And like I said, I don't like necessarily being around kids' activities. Now, when we were parents, when our kids were young, yeah, we did the parties, we did the hats, we did everything that kids supposed to do and all that. And I was fun dad and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I have no taste nor desire for that at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I truly believe now when I become a grandparent, there's a grandparent program where the things that I can't tolerate now, I'll learn how to tolerate again. But at this point, I have no idea how I would respond to if I saw my grandchildren twerking on a table or whatever. I can kind of say what I think about that now. I don't
Yeah.
think, obviously my kids don't do that.
Right.
So I think I have I'm hopeful that my grandkids won't do that.
Right.
Because again, I think a lot of that stuff is passed on. It's the culture that you kind of grow up in, or the environment that you grow up in.
Right.
So I have some hope that the way they were raised, they wouldn't want to pass that on to their
We would hope,
to their children. At least the
right.
hope.
Right. But there's in one hand and shit in another. So here we go. Here we go. Let me challenge you with this.
Okay.
It is not always guaranteed, but with aging, sometimes there's a softer approach. With aging, there's more of a no need to argue, no need to fight, kind of let things work through. So here's the challenge. Just a brief mentioning of the fact that your childhood was you had some unique challenges, and you worked hard, you and your wife, to make sure your daughters, any kids you had in your life, as far as mentoring, helping, supporting your own kids, that they won't have to have the experience that you had.
Right.
All of a sudden, wherever it got mixed in the Kool-Aid, wherever it got mixed, one day you hear your kids. So I'm theatrics, nothing too wild, but theatrics. You've done your part to make sure your kids don't go through that. But now they've been influenced, whatever the reason is. And one day you just hear, like, just mine is theatrics. You and mom here, sit your ass down. What the fuck do what I said. You hear that coming from one of your adult children to your grandkids. Older, softer, kinder, gentler, more at peace. What do you do with that? What do you do?
I don't know if I can be honest. I don't know how I would respond. I could, there's a part of me I can snatch, like I said, the old school parents who think I'm still your dad no matter what. I'll still spank you right now.
Right.
I'm not. Right. There could be a part of me that thinks that way.
Yeah.
And then there's a part of me that, hey, I'm going to pull you over, talk to you on the side or whatever, just in private, say, hey, what's going on? Why you acting this way? What's going on? There's something I need to know. Can I help in certain ways? I think all those emotions are certainly possible.
Yeah.
How I would go about doing it, it's going to be hit. It's going to be hit or miss. I hope that I don't necessarily react in the moment. Like I said, I think the time that I'm with my girls now, again, where they're still fleshing out their identity, their path in life, their spiritual life, there's still a lot of things that they're in the process of doing that I think certainly require my immediate attention.
Right.
But getting married, marital issues, having children, those type of issues, I pray that certainly I'll gather some wisdom in the interim, so I'll be better prepared to deal with that when that time comes. And then I gotta also be real about just looking, just from what I've seen just in my life. Again, things are not, there's just certain things you just don't have control over. I lost count of how many PKs just went wild. You know what I mean? You grew up in a Christian house, you grew up in this and that, and you out there doing all kinds of things where just certain things where, and this is where some of my faith comes in, where, the idea is that, you turn your kids over to God.
Right.
You raise your kids to turn to God.
Right.
And then there's also a point in time where you have to turn your kids over to God.
Right.
To say, look, God, I've done whatever it is that I've known to do, but this is on you now. Like you got to reach him. You got to. So I think I don't. And this is just in life in general. Like whether I've been laid off, whether I've been whatever, I don't spend a lot of time being frustrated over things that I can't control. I'm very hard on myself still. If there was something that I could control that I didn't handle very well, I'm still very self-conscious about that. Things that are beyond me, that are beyond my pay grade, I don't spend a lot of time on. Now, again, my kids this is my seed. Like I said, my stepping off point is right around right now.
Yeah.
Where they want to take it, I can hope, I can lead. I pray you come to me with, for information or guidance or whatever.
Right.
But you got to work this out.
Right.
Okay. So I don't know. Now my wife, she might be all up in there. You know what I mean? Right. And even now there have been times I've had to pull my wife back to say, it's like, okay, you said it to them 5 times already.
Yeah.
All right, pull it back. I just got to pull this out. It's like, look, you made your point. Let it go.
Yeah.
But she just, she wants it so bad for them to like, no, you got to get this.
Right.
And there's been times I said, look, pull it back. Make your point. All right. And let them. And then I'm like Elvin from the Cosby Show. I'm like, I got to get off you. You know? I'm just like, all right. You, like I said, preparation. Like you have to learn how to fall.
Right.
And learn on your own on certain things. I can't hold your hand at this point. The hand holding, I can only do so much of that.
Right.
So now I'm at peace with that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So I have 2 thoughts of that, 2 pieces. One, so that example, the flip side of that too, because then that example is like, well, I didn't teach you that. What was that about? Then the other example is where the kid actually maybe even looks at dad or mom and say, I don't even know how to handle this kid. We didn't do that when we were growing up. You would have never had to scream at us like that. So then they're the opposite. They actually observe. They don't even know where these behaviors came from, which, side note, the dangers of just being allowed to teach whatever or allow the kids to see whatever, hear whatever in the schools or whatever on the electronics. So now you have this grown kid saying, Dad, Mom, I have no idea where those kids, your grandkids, I have no idea where they got that from. And they sit idle out of really not knowing what to do. And then they say to you, we didn't act that way. You didn't have to respond, and we don't know how to respond. Mm-hmm. So you have that. And another point I want to make is when you say, I've gotten to the point, or I'm more like, so at our ages, I'm sure we're not concerned about what people think or say, that piece of it. Mm-hmm. But even in our own mind, I say, wow, I wonder if because of my trauma history, my trauma-based history, I say I have to let go. Like I have to make a conscious decision. It's getting easier and easier and easier.
Yeah.
A conscious decision to let go of things I can't control
Yeah.
because my meter to know when to stop, like if I snap, then how much do you get into that before you realize I didn't have to do that? What was that about? Was it really? So combining those two. So there's the one parenting style where it's I'm in it because I'm not going to let that happen. We never had that in our family, and it's not going to start now. Then there's other style that says we don't know what to do. They appear paralyzed. And because you have the past that you may have learned that certain things, like certain noises for me, I can't tolerate.
Yeah.
But that's me being transparent, that's a trauma response. I may speak to it as in I'm more controlled and managed, like, oh, I just don't like a lot of noise. But really, I can't be, it is not well for my wellness to be around a bunch of noise.
Right.
It may not be in I don't know, like that causes me a block.
Yeah.
So that being said, what would you say about people who they don't have to be aware of why they're more, maybe they don't know if it's trauma, they don't know what it is, but the people challenging them to say, you're just letting your kids do whatever, or you don't have a backbone, or why is your wife, because this would be the challenge in our current society, why is your wife, why are you pulling her back and she's doing more than you? Or the opposite argument is, see, women, we don't need men. Mama can do it more than even the dad. Any thoughts about that?
Wow.
And it's loaded, so don't whatever.
Again, I don't know if there's a solution. I think again, us trying to have such mastery over outcomes. I think it can be more frustrating than it's worth. It's really about how I focus a little bit more now. How do I deal with a situation rather than trying to master or control an outcome, if that makes any sense. Like you just said with the kids, like I said, I didn't raise my kids this way. My kids, some kids, and again, you probably have more knowledge with this anyway. Some kids just come out the womb just different. You talked about the influences on the outside or whatnot, and I've heard people, I mean, shout out to like Tommy B and Trey and whatnot. They said, "Look, I came out rough. Like you had to beat me."
Right.
I mean, they were like, the parents were good. They were, they weren't, dysfunctional or whatever. I was just a rotten kid. My father they had to whip me, or else I wouldn't listen or whatever, So again, how do you deal, I guess, with the cards essentially you've been dealt? Rather than trying to control the cards that are in the game. You know what I mean? It's like you trying to control what card. If it was up to us, every card would be an ace, right?
Right.
You got a deck of 52 cards. Every one of us is an ace.
Yeah.
But you got dealt a bad hand.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that? I might not even be equipped because again, relatively speaking, I may have a full house, and you got, craps. You know what I mean? You just. Yeah. I don't even know if I can even help in that situation, or if I'm the one who's got the crappy hand. I may reach out to you. I may reach out to someone else to at least get some perspective in terms of how they were able to manage the situation. But I think certain things, just the human experience, and especially now with all the influences, with all of the distractions and things that are going on, people are still figuring this out. Like I said, all those books that you mentioned at the beginning of the show, when those books come out,
right?
In the last 20, 30 years, I mean, like I said, back in the day, we had Dr. Spock. I think that was like the prominent name in terms of child psychology or whatever, but it wasn't like a thing. It wasn't like he was like just like Masters and Johnson were revolutionary in the sex realm. Dr. Spock might have been revolutionary in that realm. People just, you didn't go to the fact even trying to send your kid to a child psychiatrist or a psychologist was just something that just wasn't, or back in the day they said, look, that kid just has a demon. You just need to beat the devil out of that kid.
Right.
That was old. They got the devil in them. You call the church elders in. You anoint them with oil,
Yeah.
and you pray that evil spirit out of that kid or out of that woman or the guy or whatever it was.
Right.
You
And that's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting how each generation, because I still say behave. So we were talking about cars earlier. So the Audis and all these different things.
Mhm.
My belief is there's only a certain number of vehicles. I mean, there's let's say 500 different brands,
Mhm.
but they all need wheels and an engine.
Mhm.
Now, it could be gas, it could be electric, as we're
Yeah.
progressing. It could change.
Yeah.
But they still need some basic. They all share some basic. The wheels. There might be a 3-wheel vehicle or 2-wheel vehicle or a 4-wheel vehicle, but they still have wheels.
Yeah.
They still need an engine or something that's propelling, whatever, moving it forward. So no matter what generation it is, we're still talking about a set of wheels, and we're still talking about an engine. We're still talking about a kid with bad behaviors, or then we change the word to a bad kid.
Mhm.
Then that's too shaming, so we go back to a kid with bad behaviors. Then after a while, that little MF. So, but historically, humans have been humans doing what they do for that for that time and that.
Yep. Did I lose you? Hello.
Pending, I don't say the age, but pending the mindset, we're either operating out of an emotional state and frustration, anger, or calm, or not knowing what to do. And then we grow, mature, change in our belief system. But then how much we put out there, like how much do I put into the universe about what's right versus what's wrong? And I like when you said about you and your wife, how you two, it sounds like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, you two have made a decision together. We can't control the rest of the world. We have our practices and our beliefs, and this is what our home,
Mhm.
our family is going to be about. It sounds like, and I don't know, but I'm assuming there wasn't a bunch of goalpost moving, meaning you promised to be dutiful to your wife, and then you move the goalpost, and then you change, and vice versa, your wife. Together, you cemented the goalpost, and then you stayed committed to the commitment,
No doubt.
And so I salute you for that, because we know so many couples that haven't had that type of, and not like you're better. I mean, they just haven't had that type of union successfully. So I salute you for having that. If you were to offer those who are listening any suggestions on how to either get that, sustain it, or deal with if they don't have that. Get it, sustain it, or how to manage if they don't have that. Any suggestions?
Well, I've spoken on this in other forums I've done, whether it be church or seminars I've spoken at. Like I said about, past time I'm a personal trainer. And I'm always using personal training as an analogy for, again, getting fit, or how do you, start. People talk about, well, how do I start and how do I stay committed to, and I hate to say it really comes down to desire, you know.
Mhm.
You gotta want to, you gotta want it. When you want it, then it just becomes about, well, how do I do it?
Mm-hmm.
As a trainer, I can tell you what to do. I can tell you what to eat. I can, I can do everything for. I can, I'll train at your house. You come to my house. I'll meet you at the gym or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I got some clients of mine. They've been with me since day one, and they just, they're like, look, I'm coming to you, and that's it. And I, like I'm their, accountability for them to stay on task with things. Some people, they make the point that they make the date, and any excuse will do while they won't show up.
Right.
So I think at some point in time there has to be you just gotta want it
Mm-hmm.
more so than not.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly I think for us, I think my wife and I, we're very, because of, and this might be again a trauma response to your earlier point. the fact that we come from drama. We don't want it in our house. And here we're like no drama people. It said, my name is Bennett and we ain't in it. You know what I mean? So for us, simple works.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. No, ridiculous conversations. Don't come to me talk about, well, what would happen if you cheated on me or something like that.
Yeah.
We're just not those kind of people, you know.
Yeah.
We just like simplicity. We like boredom. My kids tell me all the time, you guys are boring.
Yeah.
I mean, and we wear that B. I got it on my shirt here. There's B on my shirt.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the B is for Bennett and the B is for boring. All right. So we're not trying to be the most exciting risk takers or whatnot. You know, we like normalcy. I eat basically the same foods at the same time each day. I have eggs in the morning. I'll have a protein shake mid-afternoon, early evening. I have chicken, and usually I have steak or something like that, a red meat meal at the end of the day. I have that same meal all the time, every time.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm just simple. My wife, she goes to the restaurant. You know, she's not one of these people who's like, oh, let's check out this new Thai place around the corner. No. You have chicken. She's like that. As long as you guys got chicken, I'll take some chicken fingers if you got it, rather than that's exotic.
Yeah.
So again, we're just very, we just don't like a lot of
change and
variables,
very
so to speak. So it was easier for us to get on the same page and be like, look, because any arguments, and not to say that we haven't had our disagreement, we haven't had our fights, we haven't had our arguments, but every argument we ever had was because we got off of working.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
you just got tired of it and said, look, I'm tired of fighting.
Right.
I just want us to work.
Right.
So this works. Let's stay with it because it's working.
Right.
And again, the more we went on, especially as our kids got older, when they became teenagers, it almost became paramount that look, we gotta have one message like all the time, like the iron wall. It can't be no split, no divide, no. But Dad said I can do it, but Mom said I could do it. No, we got to be on task all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And that just works for us. But you gotta want it. Just like the gym. I can't make you do anything training wise.
Yes.
You got to want that for your life.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to bring it actually to a close. And I appreciated the space and the time with you. I love the conversation. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing, and I like your perspective. Now, actually, you and I might get mocked as being kind of the softest in the network. We're like, those two there, aren't they kind? But I love the fact that you stay committed to the commitment. You have a plan. You work with what's best for you.
Yeah.
In closing of the topic of the show, let me first take ownership and say, hey, moving with the plan. So the plan is Coach K and I, we were planning. Something came up. I'm saying, hey, I'm ready. Let's do it. The topic, anger. Mr. Bennett comes on. Boom. We roll with it. See, I'm of the type where you roll with whatever the situation is. Let's roll with it. Minimize the emotion, the chaos behind it. In the beginning, CBN is doing his piece to make it work. BMU is doing his end to put the thing back up. So we're all rolling with it. So my invite to those who are listening and trying to save any of this topic piece, and I don't mean save as in we got so distracted. The conversation was so beautiful in the sense that, wow, family, emotion, managing, controlling, real life scenarios. So it didn't go specifically like into this anger conversation. So for that part, I do apologize, but I'm also unapologetic because we got to share in a wonderful conversation. And so in closing about the topic of anger, and we'll wrap it with this, keep in mind when you feel judged, what evidence do you actually have that you are being judged? Or if you are, at the end of the day, what's the worst in the world? Try not to manage your emotions based on what you believed is negative judgment. Also resentments. Do as much as you can to resolve your resentments. Try not to, at the end of the day, did you resolve enough of the X, Y, and Z so you're not going to bed with resentments? You're not holding against your wife resentments, or if your wife not holding against your husband the resentments, or whatever, whoever your partner is and whatever your family dynamic is. Are you going to bed? Are you ending the week? Are you going into another month? Some people believe in the silent treatment, but I invite you to look at how do you resolve as much of whatever's going on so you don't have the resentments, and what do you need to do? And then the piece that I didn't put on the board, because we have resentments and judgment, the other piece I didn't put up there, what we consider fairness or happiness. There's no fairness or happiness clause in the marriage. There's no fairness, happiness clause in our governing with the rules and laws of the world or our nation. So you create that happiness, you create that, and then you learn to manage with what is fair and what is not fair. You roll with it the best that you can, what is fair and what's not fair. But nothing was ever promised to you to be fair in the first place.
True.
So I thank you for the space, everyone. Thank you for being here. Our regular people come on the chat. Thank you, everyone. And CBN, thank you for being here with us and helping us behind the scenes. Everyone have a great week. Mr. Bennett, we'll see you on the next time in the studio. Everyone have a fabulous night. Peace.
Take care, everybody.